The Virgin Universe, from the Vision and the Voice, 9th Ethyr. We are come unto a palace of which every stone is a separate jewel, and is set with millions of moons. And this palace is nothing but the body of a woman, proud and delicate, and beyond imagination fair. She is like a child of 12 years old. She has very deep eyelids, and long lashes. Her eyes are closed, or nearly closed. It is impossible to say anything about her. She is naked, her whole body is covered with fine gold hairs, that are the electric flames which are the spears of mighty and terrible angels whose breastplates are the scales of her skin. And the hair of her head, that flows down to her feet, is the very light of God himself. Of all the glories beheld by the seer in the Aries, there is not one which is worthy to be compared with her littlest fingernail. For although he may not partake of the Ethyr, without the ceremonial preparations, even the beholding of this Ethyr from afar is like the partaking of all the former Ethyrs. The seer is lost in wonder, which is peace. And the ring of the horizon above her is a company of glorious archangels with joined hands, that stand and sing, "This is the daughter of Babylon the beautiful, that she hath borne unto the Father of all. And unto all hath she borne her. This is the daughter of the King. This is the Virgin of eternity. This is she that the Holy One hath wrested from the giant Time, and the prize of them that have overcome space. This is she that is set upon the throne of understanding. Holy, holy, holy is her name, not to be spoken among men. Thika they have called her, and Malka, and Betula, and Persephone. And the poets have feigned songs about her, and the prophets have spoken vain things, and the young men have dreamed vain dreams, but this is she, that immaculate, the name of whose name may not be spoken. Thought cannot pierce the glory that defendeth her, for thought is smitten dead before her presence. Memory is blank, and in the most ancient books of magic are neither words to conjure her, nor adorations to praise her. Will bends like a reed in the tempests that sweep the borders of her kingdom, and imagination cannot figure so much as one petal of the lilies whereon she standeth in the lake of crystal, in the sea of glass. This is she that hath bedecked her hair with 7 stars, the 7 breaths of God that move and thrill its excellence. And she hath tied her hair with 7 combs, whereupon are written the 7 secret names of God that are not known even of the angels, or of the archangels, or of the leader of the armies of the Lord. Holy, holy, holy art thou, and blessed be thy name for ever, unto whom the aeons are but the pulsings of thy blood. General remarks. These cards constitute a pictorial analysis of the powers of the 4 letters of the name and the 4 elements. They are also referred to the zodiac, but instead of assigning the 3 decans of each sign to one card, the influence begins with the last decan of one sign and continues to the second decan of the next. There is a further difficulty. It might well be expected that the elemental attribution would harmonize with the zodiacal attribution, but it is not so. For instance, one might anticipate that the fiery part of fire would refer to the most active of the fiery signs, namely, Aries. On the contrary, it represents the last decan of Scorpio and the first 2 of Sagittarius, which is the watery part of fire in the zodiac, and the mildest in influence. The reason for this is that in the realm of the elements all things are mixed and confused, or, as the apologist might say, counterchecked and counterbalanced. The convenience of these arrangements is that these cards are suitable as being descriptive, in a rough and empirical fashion, of divers types of men and women. One may say briefly that any of these cards is a picture of the person whose sun, or whose rising sign at his nativity, falls within their zodiacal attribution of the card. Thus, a person born on 12th October might possess many of the qualities of the Queen of Swords, while, if he were born shortly before midnight, he would add many of the characteristics of the Prince of Wands. General characteristics of the 4 dignitaries. The knights represent the powers of the letter Yod in the name. They are the most sublime, original, active part of the energy of the element. For this reason they are represented on horseback and clad in complete armor. Their action is swift and violent, but transient. In the element of fire, for instance, the knight corresponds to the lightning flash; in the element of water, to rain and springs; in that of air, to wind; in that of earth, to mountains. It is very important as a mental exercise to work out for oneself these correspondences between the symbol and the natural forces which they represent, and it is essential to practical magical work to have assimilated this knowledge. The queens represent the letter He of the name. They are the complements of the knights. They receive, ferment, and transmit the original energy of their knight. Quick to receive that energy, they are also fitted to endure for the period of their function, but they are not the final product. They represent the second stage in the process of creation, whose fourth and last state is material realization. They are represented as seated upon thrones. This emphasizes the fact that they are appointed to exercise definite functions. The princes represent the forces of the letter V in the name. The prince is the son of the queen, the old king's daughter, by the knight who has won her. He is therefore represented as in a chariot, going forth to carry out the combined energy of his parents. He is the active issue of their union, and its manifestation. He is the intellectual image of their union. His action is consequently more enduring than that of his forebears. In one respect, indeed, he acquires a relative permanence, because he is the published record of what has been done in secret. Also, he is the dying god, redeeming his bride in the hour, and by the virtue, of his murder. The princesses represent the he final of the name. They represent the ultimate issue of the original energy in its completion, its crystallization, its materialization. They also represent the counterbalancing, the reabsorption of the energy. They represent the silence into which all things return. They are thus at the same time permanent and non-existent. An audit of the equation 0 equals 2. The princesses have no zodiacal attribution. Yet evidently they represent 4 types of human being. They are those numerous elemental people whom we recognize by their lack of all sense of responsibility, whose moral qualities seem to lack bite. They are subdivided according to planetary predominance. Such types have been repeatedly described in fiction. As Eliphaz Levi wrote, the love of the Magas for such creatures is insensate, and may destroy him. The relations between these 4 elements of the name are extraordinarily complex, quite beyond the limits of any ordinary treatise to discuss. They change with every application of thought to their meaning. For instance, no sooner has the princess made her appearance than the prince wins her in marriage, and she is set upon the throne of her mother. She thus awakens the eld of the original old king, who thereupon becomes a young knight, and so renews the cycle. The princess is not only the perfect maiden, but, owing to the death of the prince, the forsaken and lamenting widow. All this occurs in the legends characteristic of the Aeon of Osiris. It is hardly possible definitely to disentangle these complications, but for the student it is sufficient if he will be content to work with one legend at a time. It is natural that the Aeon of Osiris, the regimen of air, of strife, of intellect, should be thus confused, that its symbols and formulas should overlap, should contradict each other. It is impossible to harmonize the multitudinous fables or parables, because each was invented to emphasize some formula that was regarded as imperative to serve some local or temporal purpose.